obviously the biggest news in America just happened about an hour and a half ago.
Yep.
Jack Smith came out and he released the indictment for Trump in relation to January 6th. I'm not surprised. I didn't think a grand jury was going to let him off the hook for this.
Mm-hmm.
They hit him with a couple counts, the main one being conspiracy to defraud the United States and going against the election and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just, let's see. A conspiracy to corruptly obstruct and impede the January 6th congressional proceeding, a conspiracy against the right to vote and to have one vote counted, and a conspiracy to defraud the United States by using dishonesty, fraud, and deceit to impair, obstruct, and defeat the lawful federal government function.
Okay. The one that resonates there with me is the attempt to impede, like, having one vote counted.
Yeah.
Did you listen to the call with the Georgia DA?
Yeah.
That seems like pretty good evidence.
Yeah, that's kind of open and shut. For all those who don't know, he called the Georgia Secretary of State, and he basically said, like, can you find a couple more votes to put us over the edge?
Yeah.
And just a blatant ask of, like, just, I know we didn't have them, but just, can you find them?
Well, I wonder if it almost shows some shrewdness, because on the call, over and over again, he's giving reasons that he expects that the votes were there and just weren't counted.
Yeah.
So he's setting himself up for, if this goes to court, to have plausible deniability about expecting whether the votes were actually there or whether he was just asking them to add.
That's what a lot of this is about, right? A lot of this indictment is basically them proving that Trump and his associates knew they were lying the whole time. And because they knew they were lying, because he says in the very beginning, it's your right as an American to say that the election was false. Like, you can say that. He opens it up with that. But then he breaks down and, like, but if you're knowingly spreading misinformation for the sole purpose of staying in power like that, then that's when it gets bad. So I'm not going to go through all the examples because we don't have enough time. We could do that the whole show. But one example is with Arizona on November 22nd. The Arizona governor, the night before he was certifying the state legislatures, one of the co-conspirators, I don't know who it was co-conspirator number 1, he called to speak with the Speaker of the House of Representatives in Arizona and made knowingly false claims of the election fraud aimed at interfering in the assessment of the electors in Arizona. And even after the Arizona Speaker of the House proves that his claims were false, Trump goes on to say them again anyway. So there's evidence of Trump and his associates making the claim to a person behind the scenes, and openly saying, no, this isn't true, and then Trump continuing to say it. So he knows, he's knowingly saying it after he knows it's false.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so funny because I can still see a sympathetic judge being like, you can't condemn a person for being stubborn, right? Something like that,
right?
So it's just going to come down to, or a judge, or it's going to be a grand jury. Is it?
Well, there's going to be a jury made up of people from DC that are going to do it.
Okay. That
are going to be the arbiters here.
See, I trust them more.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about this other case, this other example in Georgia. Co-conspirator number 1 calls someone in Georgia, and he says that there are 10. He makes a presentation, and he says that there are 10,000 people, dead people, who voted in Georgia. And then that afternoon, a senior advisor to the defendant told the defendant's chief of staff through text messages, just an FYI, the team verified that the 10,000 supposed dead people voting in Georgia is not accurate. It was alleged in co-conspirator 1's hearing today. So there's internal communication that's saying, look, we know this is false. By the way, we checked it out. It's all wrong.
Wow.
And then Trump went on to say that, wow, blockbuster testimony taking place right now in Georgia, ballot stuffing by Dems when Republicans were forced to leave the counting room, plenty more coming. But this is all after he already knows, and he's gotten told that it's false.
That is pretty damning.
It's hard. It's a rough position for Trump to be in. I mean, I don't think he gets away with this one at all. I don't think there's any chance for it, and nor should we want him to get away from it, because I think this moment was incredibly dangerous. I know it might sound like a lib take. But like, and people are sick of hearing about January 6th. But guys, don't get desensitized to how actually bad it was. This was almost the destruction of American democracy. Whether you like it or not, that's what he wanted. And in the indictment, we have proof that it's what he wanted. In paragraph 81 of the indictment, on January 3rd, co-conspirator number 4 is talking to a deputy White House counsel, okay? And deputy White House counsel informed the defendant that there is no option in which you do not leave the White House on January 20th. So he is saying that you are going to stay, right? There is no world that you leave. Now that same deputy White House counsel tried to dissuade co-conspirator 4 from assuming the role of acting attorney general. The deputy White House counsel reiterated to co-conspirator 4 that there had not been outcome determinative fraud in the election, and that if the defendant remained in office, there would be riots in every major city in the United States. So this White House deputy counsel is warning the defendant and the co-conspirators, like, if you do this, there will be riots across the United States and massive protests because what you're doing is illegal and it's wrong. Co-conspirator number 4 responded, well, Deputy White House counsel, that's why we have an Insurrection Act, where they would call up the National Guard, call up the federal troops, and put down the riots and the protests by force.
Wow.
They said that out loud. So listen, if you're a Republican and you want tax cuts, that's fine. If you're a Republican and we disagree on immigration policy, that's fine. Let's talk about it. That's what the show is for. But Trump is not your guy. Trump is a fascist scumbag, and he does not have the same values that Americans should have. End of story.
I don't want to take the wind out of your sails. I don't want to muffle your mic drop because, I mean, I think saying that this was the greatest threat to American democracy probably since the Civil War is not an understatement by any means. And again, it's hard to think that people would downplay January 6th when there's video of the rioters like breaking into Congress. Mm-hmm. There's a video of Congress people running for their lives in fear of their lives. People died there. How much more serious does it have to get? Like, how much more scary? And to me, it's kind of this bigger issue or problem of he did so successfully build this cult of personality, right?
Yeah.
All of these people would be perfectly happy. Like, it is Trump over democracy for them.
Oh, totally.
That is the feeling.
Like, how many people are going to hear this and read this and think, oh, I wish he did do the Insurrection Act.
Yeah.
I wish he did kill all those libs.
That's going to be 25, 30, 35% of America.
Easily.
And that's...
The rest of us need to coalesce and defeat that, because it's so much bigger than, oh, I don't agree with the Inflation Reduction Act that Joe Biden passed. Mm-hmm. It's so much bigger than, I wish the American Rescue Plan was bigger and I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden because he's not radical enough for me and I'm a socialist. You need to realize that we had a guy who was threatening to use the Insurrection Act to put down American protesters.
Exactly. And of course, this is the strategy that the Democrats are taking, mm-hmm. right? This is what 2020's wins were based on. This is what 2022's wins were based on. It is the fear that that ends up taking over and holding on to the power. One thing I would say, and I just talked to Anthony about this mini revelation I had over or last night, where I was thinking about how we can political will basically is our only obstacle to solving any of our problems.
So true.
When you look at developing the COVID vaccine, recently the speed at which they were able to fix the I-95 in Pennsylvania after it collapsed, pretty much anything that has combined political willpower behind it can get done. The problem is we so rarely have that. And that's because we are entrenched in our political ideologies, and more than ideologies, we're entrenched on our sides. Mm-hmm. We're like sports fans, right? We're hooligans just rooting for one side to beat the other. That's why almost every political commentary show you will ever watch has probably half of its time spent just shitting on the other side.
Right.
They're not talking about policy most of the time. And the reason I say this and how I want to bring this back to connect it is it might be 25% that want Trump over democracy. It might be 30, it might be 35. The way that we make it not turn into 40 and 45 and 50 is to not make those people that are on the fringe, that feel like they want to belong in this more conservative community to support January 6th, who would find welcome there, we need to make them not feel like evil people.
Right.
Just because they are close to that, they're on that fringe.
Mm-hmm.
The more we can open our arms and listen to these people and be compassionate, even though we do fear what they think, we do see things about them that are hateful and that we could even consider evil. As far as efficacy, it doesn't work to just vilify them.
Absolutely not. I totally agree.
Yeah.
I mean, like, look, you might have different opinions about abortion policy or something like that, or tax policy, but that isn't a rejection of democracy in the way that Trump is exemplifying that.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump, we need to keep as many people out of Trump's arms as possible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And organizing a big tent that is able to overpower that and welcome in people and de-radicalize people in some instances is super important. I think too often we shut people out of spaces and don't forgive them for past beliefs,
Yeah.
right? And don't forgive them when they say, oh man, I was wrong about that, I changed my mind. Or like, even if you just, you'll find one thing to disagree with somebody and then you'll cast them out as a conservative bigot.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a huge point. This is a liberal problem
It's
more
a liberal
than a
problem.
conservative.
It's so easy to join the conservative movement. It's so easy.
Yeah.
You just have to say it, and they'll bring you in with open arms. It's so easy to get accepted into a conservative space.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to join a liberal space.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Because even within the liberal ideology, there are so many competing priorities that vilify the other ones. Like a great example of this is like YIMBY versus people who want to prioritize protecting like renters' rights.
Yeah.
Right. They will hate each other and hurl insults at each other because they think one problem is more important than the other. And if they're doing that at people who are already on their side, like what people do on the internet to people who aren't on their side is just constant vitriol.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, liberal spaces have to become more open and more just not so open that it puts the people that are currently in liberal spaces in danger, right? Like not that open, but open enough where if someone is interested in the ideas, but he might not be fully convinced, let him in.
Yes. Curious and open-minded, not weak-minded.
Yeah. Not someone who's going in to pick a fight.
No.
You know,
no.
that's not, I've always been on the favor of that.
Yeah.
And I've had experiences through college where people never wanted to communicate. And I've had good experiences in college where I knew conservative guys and they were great dudes.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't agree with them on a lot of stuff. Some of the conservatives I met were not great dudes.
Yeah.
And I didn't talk to them, but some of them were, and we would hang out and it would be a fine time. And I wish more people would take the time to do that because I think that will make Trump less popular.
Yes.
To be honest, because I think so much of the Trump thing is feeling rejected.
Yeah.
And feeling forgotten.
Left behind.
Yeah.
Totally.
And we need less people to feel that way if we want him to become less popular.